Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to have a great webinar with Allison Hoyt of Nationwide. A couple housekeeping notes. If you have questions, please type them in the question box on your control panel at the bottom right on the right side of your screen. We'll answer them at the end of the presentation. After the webinar, feel free to give me a call to receive a copy of today's webinar and answer any additional questions. Now, a little bit about our presenter, Allison. She joined Nationwide's Advanced Consulting Group in 2018 after 6 years with the advanced sales team at a mutual life insurance company in New York City. She helps position life insurance in the financial plans of individuals, business, and charitable organizations, and has a particular interest in split dollar life insurance, business succession planning, income tax and transfer tax mitigation strategies, and student loan debt management. Thanks again for joining us today. Allison, you have control.
All right, thank you very much, Kip. For what it's worth, I'm going to share my webcam. It wasn't working earlier, but I find these virtual training sessions more followable if you can see the presenter. So I hope our attendees can see. We've got 18 folks on the line already. Maybe a few more will join us. So today we're going to discuss one of the most successful life insurance sales ideas I think we've had it Nationwide probably 2-3 years running, and we call it the New Wealth Transfer. And if you think about wealth transfer or estate planning, and we did a little word association, the first financial product that will come to your mind is life insurance. But because of changes in health and wealth over the past 30 or so years, we financial professionals know that life insurance doesn't cut it anymore when it comes to a successful wealth transfer or estate plan. We need to start thinking long-term care insurance when we're helping our clients with their wealth transfer or estate plans. So that's what we mean when we say the new wealth transfer. It's incorporating some type of long-term care component into your client's estate or wealth transfer plans. We're not displacing life insurance. Life insurance has its role and that will remain. The new wealth transfer is all about adding long-term care insurance to our clients' estate plans. Here's our standard disclosure slide. Nationwide, myself included, we don't provide tax, legal, or investment advice. Your clients always need to speak with their own tax, legal, or investment professionals. My team, the Advanced Consulting Group at Nationwide, we do quite a bit of phone calls with your clients' attorneys and sometimes accountants on these particular sales ideas. So if we can be of assistance to you, we're happy to speak with your clients' attorneys. Okay, and I should add, I believe you have the ability to type in questions. Kip will be able to share your questions with me at the end of my remarks. So as we go along, you have a comment, you have a question, feel free to type it in and we'll address it in a little bit. Here's what we're going to talk about over the next 30 minutes or so. First, we'll talk about trends in wealth and health in America over the last 30 years. And what this presentation really is 2 different sales ideas, 2 different ways for you to position long-term care insurance in the estate plans of your clients, specifically with 2 different client segments. First, I'll talk about how we can position long-term care insurance in the estate plans of the mass affluent, and I'll be sure to define who I mean by that term. And then we'll look at how to position long-term care insurance in the estate tax plans of the high net worth. And I'll also define who I mean by high net worth. So we'll do some ground setting, some background, and then we'll move into two different sales ideas for two different client segments. So here are some stats from the Spectrum Group's Wealth in America survey. And I want us to focus on the first two rows, households in America with net worths between $100,000 and about $5 million. Okay, those I'm going to consider our mass affluent clients. Again, those with a household net worth between $100,000 and $5 million. There are more than 40 million mass affluent households in the United States, the majority of whom, again, are your clients. And if you look at the pie chart on the right, the mass affluent are made up of the blue and the orange slices of that pie. Now, very important to the definition for the purpose of this presentation, the most important definition is that our mass affluent clients are not likely to face exposure to the federal estate tax. Now, if we rewind the tape back to the beginning of the century, that wasn't always the case for our mass affluent clients, because the federal estate tax exemption was much lower than it was today. Back in 2000, the federal estate tax exemption was only $675,000. In 2006, it was $2 million. In 2009, it was $3.5 million. This year, 2024, hard to believe, it is $13.61 million per person. It's never been as high in our country's history, but we do know that in 2026, the basic exclusion amount is going to drop to $5 million indexed for inflation. And due to the amount of inflation we've had recently, a lot of folks are pegging it to be $7 million per person in 2026. So our mass affluent clients are looking at this, and some of them see the big numbers today. Some of them know that the exemption is going to drop in the future. $7 million per person, that's $14 million per couple. And if our mass affluent households are generally in the range of $5 million per person net worth, represented by that horizontal red line, they're looking at this and they're going, all right, doesn't look like I'm ever going to be exposed to the federal estate tax. And some of them have done estate tax planning, right? You likely have some mass affluent clients who have done ILIT planning, irrevocable life insurance trusts. And they've put the life insurance in a trust because they believe they, at the time, were going to have federal estate tax exposure, or to prevent any federal estate tax exposure. And I say these folks now have ILIT remorse. They're saying, what did I do? I don't need an irrevocable trust anymore. Look at where the exemption is. Look at what this family's net worth is. Even with the sunset coming in 2026, doesn't look like I'm going to have exposure to the federal estate tax. Let's get rid of the trust. Let's get rid of the policy. Okay, well, we want our clients to kind of slow down and think that through a little bit. The law, the exemption can change at any time. It would be a real kick in the rear if in the year they pass away, the law has changed and the exemption is lower than their estate value, and they do end up paying an estate tax, and yet they got rid of their ILIT. So that threat is always lurking out there. And plus, irrevocable trusts are great to have, regardless of the presence or absence of an estate tax. You can name them the beneficiary of a variety of assets. Those assets, if you put in during your life, get creditor protection. and they can be creditor protection for beneficiaries if they stay in trust. So the planning that they've done is pretty good from a wealth transfer estate planning point of view, regardless of the estate tax. Now, for these clients, this is all rational, but it may not be enough to have them maintain their policies. So we want them to consider one more trend impacting wealth in America. And that trend over the same 30 or 30 years has been health in America. And this slide asks us, how has mortality changed as a result of the following health conditions over the last 20-ish years since the year 2000? Are more people dying? Are deaths up? Or are fewer people dying from these ailments? Are deaths down today versus 2000? And when we ask, as far as breast cancer is concerned, deaths are actually up today since the year 2000, but only by about 1%. When it comes to heart attack and stroke, deaths are down compared to the year 2000 by about 7% and 10.5% respectively. And finally, when it comes to Alzheimer's, shouldn't be a shock to anyone that today more people are dying from Alzheimer's than they were back in 2000. What may be shocking is how much that has increased by over 145%. I've heard it said that we are living longer, but dying slower. The medical advances today have allowed us to survive a lot of the things that used to kill us, but maybe with some permanent mental or physical disability. And then when you think about Alzheimer's and cognitive decline, the average age of onset is about 80, depending on what studies you read. And life expectancy is about 8 to 10 years, again, depending on what studies you read. But that is always looking to be improved as new drugs come on the market. And finally, my two final facts about health in America and how it will impact wealth in America. It is true that the longer you live, the more likely it is you will need long-term care supports and services. I think the statistic is essentially flip a coin, whether or not someone age 65 today will require supports in the future. And finally, between the years 1980 and 2010, we've seen an increase of 66% in people living to age 100. And if you buy anyone sends like birthday cards or anniversary cards and actually goes to a store anymore, I do all of those things. I actually send cards and go shopping in person. I always, smile when I see there's like a section for it's your 100th birthday card. And there's like the 50th wedding anniversary and the 60th wedding anniversary cards. So if we put these trends in wealth about the exemption and ILITs and health with folks living longer and Alzheimer's being kind of the demon of old age as it's become, if we put these trends in wealth and health together over the past 30 years, an interesting picture emerges for our mass affluent clients. And it makes the estate tax really irrelevant in their wealth transfer and estate plans. Because the costs of long-term care have become the new estate tax for the mass affluent. What do I mean by that? I mean that the largest threat to wealth transfer planning for the mass affluent is not the estate tax, it's the costs of long-term care. It doesn't matter that 40% of an estate above exemption is going to go to the LTC rather than to the IRS. And for those clients who are mass affluent, purchasing some type of long-term care insurance product is going to help them accomplish their wealth transfer plans. Take a look at some of the costs from Nationwide's long-term care cost comparison map. This is in Columbus, Ohio. So depending on where you are, it might be a little higher, it might be a little lower. Private nursing home room is going to run you about $105,000 a year, and an assisted living facility about $65,000 a year. And currently, home health aid, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, 40 hours a week, is going to be about $50,000 a year. You can use that link and check out what the costs look like in your area. What's really scary about that link is it allows you to project what these costs might be when your clients are more likely to actually need care in 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, or 30 years. Even currently, though, you multiply any of these costs by 5 years, you're looking at $500,000, more than $500,000 for nursing home care, and $250,000 to $300,000 for other forms of care. And I think we have to ask, if we were encouraging our clients to insure for an estate tax liability of these amounts, why aren't we also going to encourage our clients to insure for long-term care liabilities of similar amounts? So back to our mass affluent clients with ILIT remorse. Keep those trusts. Don't get rid of what you've done. We want them to repurpose their ILITs for the cost of long-term care. Don't get rid of it. The laws could always change. That's true. What's very likely as you age is a long-term care event. You can maintain the trust and the policy, but you repurpose it for long-term care. Now you have this dynamic, versatile weapon that can be used, in multiple situations in the future. So how do they repurpose their ILITs for long-term care? That's what you have to help them figure out. It is possible to add a long-term care rider to products, some products post-issue. Nationwide does allow the long-term care rider to be added post-issue to any of our products that it's available, but you do need to be insurable for long-term care in order to do that. If that's not possible, the other option to repurpose the ILIT for long-term care is to do a 1035 exchange. Now, to do a 1035 exchange, you have to be insurable for both life insurance and long-term care. And when you do the exchange, you have to help your client determine what product is aligned with their goals. Are they looking for more death benefit or more long-term care protection? If they're very still interested in the death benefit, then you might show them a life insurance policy with long-term care rider. If they're more interested in long-term care benefits rather than a death benefit, then you might be showing them an asset-based or linked benefit long-term care policy. At Nationwide, we call ours Care Matters. And I should say that all of our long-term care insurance riders pay cash indemnity benefits. Our survivorship, so a lot of these ILITs have a survivorship IUL in them. You could 1035 exchange to a Nationwide survivorship IUL and add a long-term care insurance rider on both spouses. That can be done. Again, if they're more interested in death benefit. Also, one of our most brand new products is Care Matters Together. That is an asset-based long-term care product where I believe, again, you could take a survivorship policy and 1035 it to Care Matters Together, where two insureds, two spouses likely in this situation, can both enjoy linked benefit long-term care insurance coverage. So we're all over this market. Now fast forward into the future, and what happens if the insured does end up having a long-term care event? Things look a little different because an individual doesn't own this policy. An irrevocable trust owns the policy. So first, most carriers, Nationwide is one, will pay the long-term care benefits to the policy owner. Okay, so we will pay the maximum monthly benefit to the trustee of the trust. Okay, if you know anything about ILITs and estate tax planning, you know that the person who is the insured, the person who needs the benefits, is normally the person who created that trust, known as the grantor. That person is not a trustee or a trust beneficiary. So it's not as easy as the trustee getting the long-term care benefits from Nationwide and saying, here you go, insured. Here you go, here's the money for your long-term care expenses. The trustee cannot make a distribution to the insured because they're not a trust beneficiary. So how do we get the money that's in the trust to the person who needs it? The easiest way to do it would involve the SLAT or BLAT provisions of the trust. If the trust was already drafted with the Spousal Lifetime Access Trust, SLAT, or Beneficiary Lifetime Access Trust, BLAT provisions, again, that's Spousal Lifetime Access Trust, SLAT, or Beneficiary Lifetime Access Trust, BLAT. If those provisions are present in the trust, the trustee would be able to take the long-term care benefits, distribute them to the insured's spouse, SLAT, and the insured's spouse can help the insured pay for the long-term care expenses. You can't do a SLAT if you don't have a spouse. So if a spouse has predeceased the insured, or they are divorced and the insured has children, maybe we can consider doing this as a BLAT, where the trustee receives the long-term care insurance benefits, distributes them to the insured's child, who then shares those benefits with the insured parent. Exactly what happens in the future, we're not going to be sure of today, but those are some of the options. If those provisions are not included in a trust, okay, we can still get those benefits to the person who needs them by relying on loans. Virtually all trustees are empowered to make loans. So the trustee would receive the long-term care benefits from Nationwide and loan that money to the insured who needs them. Loans are featured prominently in the strategy for our high net worth clients, so we'll explore that more fully next. Okay, so we've gotten some background on health and wealth in America, the ILIT, some health issues, including Alzheimer's, and we've looked at the sales idea and positioning for a specific type of client, our mass affluent clients that do not have federal estate tax exposure, and specifically those with ILITs that are wanting to get rid of them. All right, so we're going to repurpose those ILITs for that client segment. The second sales idea is for our high net worth clients. And when I say high net worth, I mean an individual or a married couple with federal estate tax liability. So if I'm thinking about this today, as long as my clients are not going to pass away, or are likely not to pass away before 2026, I'm going to target individuals worth over $7 million, and I'm going to target married couples worth over $14 million. So our high net worth, the way I'm defining it for this presentation, individuals or couples with exposure to the federal estate tax. Now, these folks are very wealthy, and we joke at Nationwide, you know, they might not be too hot about buying a product, long-term care insurance, to pay for future long-term care benefits. Some of them might even say, you know, I could buy the nursing home. Why would I buy Care Matters? And that might be true. They might be wealthy enough to buy the nursing home. But if we take a step back again with those objections, you know, insurance works regardless for the wealthy or the not wealthy. I'm sure Warren Buffett has home insurance, even though he could probably build and rebuild his house, you know, 20 times over. You know, there is leverage provided by insurance. And what our high net worth clients often don't appreciate is that they have an embedded cost to doing nothing, right? So why would I buy insurance? I'll just pay for it out of pocket if the time comes and I need care. Well, they have, there's actually a cost to do that, which our mass affluent clients don't have. And we call that at Nationwide the cost of getting lucky, right? So if they don't end up using maybe a pot of money that they've earmarked for care in old age, if they don't end up using that much money for long-term care, that money is still subject to a 40%, yes, 40%, that's almost half, to a 40% estate tax. That's a win-lose scenario. They've won because they didn't use the money for long-term care. They've lost because they've paid the IRS more estate taxes, right? And this embedded cost of doing nothing is not something that impacts our mass affluent clients because they're not exposed to the estate tax. So doing nothing is not a great plan from a financial perspective. It's kind of a win-lose proposition. And here we put some numbers to this idea of the cost of getting lucky. Let's say they set aside $1 million in their mind, you know, if I need care, I'll take it out of my money market, my CD, you know, some type of liquid asset. Well, again, flip a coin, whether or not you're going to need it. And hey, if they end up blowing through that $1 million, their plan worked well enough, right? They would have been better off having insurance, right? Not spending $1 million on $1 million of care. Or the alternative is they die peacefully in their sleep one night and don't use any of the $1 million. Then they're cutting a check to the IRS, an additional $400,000. So doing nothing and not buying insurance has a cost for our high net worth clients. And again, this is all, you know, logical, makes sense, but might not be enough to get them over the hump to purchase a product. So the cherry for them is to explain to them, well, don't think of this policy as your long-term care insurance policy. Think of it as additional estate tax mitigation. You know, so we know you can afford to pay for your care. You know, having insurance, you're going to do that more efficiently. But let's think of this product actually as an estate tax mitigation tool. And what we want our high net worth clients to do is to add an additional product to those ILITs that has some type of long-term care component, either an asset-based product or a life insurance policy with long-term care. We don't want to repurpose their existing products. We don't want to minimize the death benefits that they already have. They have a very important need for those death benefits. For our high net worth clients, we want them to add an additional product to those ILITs. You know, we'll explain to them that self-funding is possible, you know, way to go, but is undesirable because the leverage that you can get from the insurance. And here's the cherry, the potential for estate tax mitigation when we combine those long-term care benefits with loans. And any way you slice it, either, less out of pocket for care, less state taxes to the IRS, the result is enhanced wealth transfer for the family. And again, let me, beat this point over your head. If we combine those long-term care benefits payable to a trust, and we loan them out to our high net worth client, they're going to pass away with a debt, an additional debt in their estate. That means that their estate value is going to be lower, and the estate taxes owed also going to be lower. Let me walk you through an example with a hypothetical high net worth client, Jane. Jane is very wealthy, and her advisors have anticipated that at her death, there's going to be a $5 million estate tax liability. She's done all the things. She has her ILIT. She's made a gift of her exemption. She's done flips and grats and whatever else you can imagine. Sometimes you can't get the estate tax liability down to zero. There's an anticipated $5 million estate tax liability at her death. And she already has an ILIT with a $5 million life insurance policy. She talks to you and, recognizes she might need long-term care in the future, likes the idea of potentially decreasing her estate taxes. So she adds an additional product to her ILIT for $1 million of long-term care insurance. And if she ever does end up needing care, the trustee is going to loan out those benefits to her. The interest rate will be 7%, which doesn't seem very high now. When we were giving this presentation 2 or 3 years ago, it seemed wildly high. Wow, have things changed? But 7% is the guaranteed loan interest rate in the contract plus 1%. The idea is we want to get the highest legitimate defensible debt in her estate to save her the most estate taxes. So the interest rate would be 7%. The loan interest will accrue and capitalize twice a year, and she can use her vacation home as the collateral. This is a bona fide loan. We want it to be respected as a loan. There will be monies moved from her estate to satisfy the debt to the trust at her death. So what happens? It ends up that Jane does need long-term care in the future. And she, or Nationwide, will pay the maximum monthly benefit to her trustee. Let's say that's $20,000 a month. To exhaust the full $1 million of benefits, that means the $20,000 benefit is payable for 4 years and 2 months. And as those payments are made to the trust, the trustee loans that money to Jane. Jane borrows those funds and can use them to pay for her long-term care expenses. The interest is capitalized. And unfortunately, Jane passes away shortly after the long-term care benefits are fully exhausted, at the end of year 5, let's say. At that time, what do things look like? Well, there is a debt in her estate to the trust of about $1.2 million. And that debt is made up of the $1 million of long-term care benefits paid out, as well as the accrued and capitalized interest. Looking at the right-hand side, so at her death, we have the following picture. The $5 million policy that was already in the ILIT pays out. We didn't disturb that at all. And the estate repays the debt, the loan to the trust to the tune of $1.2 million. And we've put roughly $6.2 million in the trust. What's great is that we've saved Jane's estate almost $500,000 of estate taxes. the debt and the capitalized interest, have saved her estate 40% in estate taxes, roughly $500,000. It's like we gave Jane an additional $1.2 million of estate tax exemption. And the longer Jane lives, the bigger the estate tax savings. As the debt grows with capitalized and accrued interest, the larger the long-term care benefits paid, the larger the debt in the estate, the bigger the estate tax savings. The example I gave was with $1 million. Nationwide can now go up to $2 million of long-term care benefits with our long-term care rider. And it's possible with any of our Care Matters products to get well over $2 million of long-term care benefits if you add any of the inflation riders to that policy. So to wrap up, there are a bunch of really helpful products available today on the market for long-term care. We need to get our clients thinking about long-term care in the context of their estate plans. For our mass affluent clients, the costs of long-term care are the new estate tax. And for our high net worth clients, long-term care insurance planning represents an opportunity to do additional estate tax mitigation. That is our team, the ACG, and going to turn it back over to Kip.
All right, thanks, Allison. We do have one question out here. This person wants to know what can be done naturally for presenting Alzheimer's.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know. What can
Okay.
be done naturally to prevent Alzheimer's? I'm the wrong person to ask that question.
Okay. All right. And then the next question is money coming from an inherited IRA going into long-term care insurance should move without taxes?
Depends what type of inherited IRA, right? If it's a Roth type, you'll get that money, the heir will get that money income tax free. And if a product is owned personally, there are no taxes, no gift tax issues. But if a product is looked to be owned by an irrevocable trust, you're likely going to have to consider the gift tax implications of funding the trust.
All right. Another one then is how do you get them to move on this planning even after explaining these issues?
Well, I don't have clients, right? I'm not out there in the field. I'm, again, not the best person to ask for that. Personally, I know that when I'm, in my 80s, I'm going to have over $1 million of long-term care benefits. I think we've seen, I think everyone has personal experiences now, right? Like it's not like a raise your hand if you've ever experienced this. No, everyone, I think, has someone in their family with Alzheimer's or dementia or tried to do Medicaid emergency planning, and they know it's a nightmare. I guess one thing you could do is kind of try to flesh that out. What are the stories in that person's family, and how having a plan and having funding for that plan could really make a world of difference.
Okay, there's a couple more here, but I think I can answer them directly to these people. We can send out a recording, so give me a call to get those, and there will be phone numbers provided as well. So I think that's going to wrap it up. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and thanks Allison for the great information. Give us a call or send us an email. Go ahead.
Oh, I just also wanted to add, we do have a white paper that tracks the ideas in this presentation. I can shoot you a copy afterwards if anyone's interested.
Sure, yeah, send me a copy. If I get requests for it, I'll send it up then. You bet.
Thank you.
All right, and everyone else, you can send us an email at life@jetter.com if you have additional questions that pop up. or if you'd like to see illustrations, of course. And again, thanks everyone. Have a great day, and we'll wrap this up. Goodbye.